for having argued for in this legislation. Taxpayer protection and a guarantee that taxpayers will not be left on the hook. We're hopeful that this legislation will help businesses that are beginning to have trouble getting a line of credit to make payroll. I have received phone calls from state employees, city employees, county employees who are now telling me that they have seen their 401ks lose 40% of its value. And so this legislation I'm very proud of. It is an exclamation mark on what I think has been a very successful Congress, a very successful trip as we move our country in a new direction. And so I'm pleased to be here today and to thank these outstanding Americans and to yield now to Chairman Frank, who, I'm sorry, to Chairman Emanuel. Thank you so much, Chairman Emanuel.
Had he done Barney, I'm sure it would have been a bigger wind-up. This is one piece of an economic puzzle. We did what we needed to do to bring calm to the markets. But make no mistake about it, the middle class in this country is working harder, earning less, and paying more. In the last 7 years, median household income has gone down $1,200. Cost for education, health care, and energy has gone up a collective $4,800. Under the economic programs of the last 7 years, the middle class, in no uncertain terms, is struggling and being squeezed. And while we have done what we needed to do to deal with the liquidity in the financial market, the next step, as I'm sure you'll hear from Chairman Frank, is about dealing with the regulatory oversight that must be brought to the financial markets because our regulations are not in step with what's happening, but either is our economic policy in step with what's happening to the middle class today. We must have an economic agenda that provides the middle class a tax cut, the ability to have universal access to higher education, that if you work, you have health care, and if you work, you have a retirement plan. That is an agenda that puts the middle class at the center of our economic program, because after the last 7 years, make no mistake about it, yes, you are seeing the financial crisis, but it's because the economy has been built on a weak foundation that has squeezed the middle class, and these policies must be changed. And while we all have done and contributed to this part in helping pass this legislation, I want to take a particular moment to also thank an individual who's not here, and that is Barack Obama, who made numerous calls not only to all of us, but to members of our caucus and helped us gather the votes on the Democratic side to pass this legislation. So again, we've done one thing, and we've done one thing, an important thing, and that is bringing both liquidity and calm to the financial markets. The next steps must be to bring that same sense of calm and ease, financial ease, to the middle class, and that starts by putting them at the center of our economic agenda. With that, I turn to my colleague and friend, John Larson.
Let me commend Speaker Pelosi for our outstanding leadership, our entire leadership team for the effort that was put forward. We have, in essence, stopped the bleeding that was going on and did it under the leadership of Barney Frank in a thoughtful and intelligent manner that has, in the short term, rescued our economy. I've held town hall meetings and forums when I got home. I heard from a lady named Donna Donovan, and she said, "Mr. Larson, we heard what you were saying in your efforts to rescue Main Street. I'm more interested in the message that Mr. Obama is talking about in terms of rescuing those of us on the side streets, those that continue to suffer, as Mr. Emanuel said, under this economic squeeze." She was a business owner whose business went under, who had to get a part-time job, who now doesn't have any health care benefits, and finds herself in this situation. That's the new direction that Democrats are going to set under the leadership of Barack Obama. That's where we need to go. We're grateful that we were able to come together in a bipartisan fashion to solve a temporary issue. Now we must move on to the greater issue at large that faces the American public. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris Van Hollen.
I thank my colleague. We gather here at a very important time in our nation's history and take this action. The American economy is extremely weak, and because of the credit crunch in the financial markets, we faced an extreme danger that we would go from weak to dropping off a precipice. And that is why the possibility of doing nothing was not really an option for the American people who are hurting out there. We just saw from today's job report another 159,000 Americans lost their jobs. That means more than 759,000 Americans have lost their jobs since January. What we've done today, we hope, is to stop the fall. What we need to do now is to help in the recovery under the Speaker's leadership and a plan set forth by Barack Obama. We have a plan for economic recovery. Unfortunately, the President has said he would not support that, but that's where we need to go, from not just stopping the free fall, but beginning a recovery, and that is what the American people need to make sure that we have the opportunity for everybody to share in the potential prosperity of this country as we work to rebound and bring ourselves back. And I now would like to introduce the man who was at the center of all this activity, a person who was under enormous amount of pressure from the very time Secretary Paulson first asked us to take a blank check, and who said, we're not going to give you a blank check. We're not going to give you a blank check. We're going to rewrite this in a way that protects the interests of the American people. He did that. Barney Frank, Chairman of Financial Services Committee.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I want to make a procedural point and a substantive one. Earlier in my life, I was going to be a professor of political science until I did a little self-analysis and realized that a short attention span suits you better to be a legislator than a professor, and that's why I'm here. But I have been a student of Congress, and I encountered a fascinating thing. You heard criticisms from some of those opposed to this bill that the normal committee process wasn't followed, and that is true. But in this situation, given the level of interest in this bill, the absence of the normal committee process was part of an operation in which there was more member participation, genuine, active member participation, than in any bill I've seen in 36 years of legislating between the Massachusetts House and here. This was a bill, we had caucuses, we had private meetings, and I really commend the students of the Congress to look at this. Yes, in the normal sense, the committee process is a way that the members of the committee have an input, but the rest of the Congress generally then just says yes or no. It is true in this case there was not the committee input, but that was not replaced by leadership diktat, but by a genuine, active, continuing, sometimes annoying participation by all of the members. And I really do invite people who are students of Congress to look at this. It's not a process that any of us could sustain very frequently, but it worked extraordinarily well. There was also a criticism that said we were rushing this bill through and it needed more time. I felt that, in fact, the bill had a number of provisions that people were going to find very attractive, for instance, in the area of foreclosure prevention, that we didn't have time to tell them. And for those who say we rushed the bill through, let me cite one fact. A delay of 4 days resulted in 60 more votes for the bill. In other words, the delay in this case led to a significant increase in support. So the notion that by rushing the bill through we somehow avoided a good look, and maybe that would have been true on Monday, but the consequence of the extra time was much more support. Now to the next part. And I really feel a great sense of responsibility for Ram and for me and for many others. These are the days of awe. The days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for Jewish people, they are the days of awe, A-W-E. And we have a task that it's appropriate to contemplate in that context. Starting in January, this Congress, the Committee on Financial Services, will have a major role, but it will be the whole Congress. We have to rewrite housing finance in America. We have to decide what replaces the structurally imperfect Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. How do we provide for the maximum flow of housing